Hello everybody and welcome to SMAM Listens, a channel where we look at my new haircut, which thank God I have finally got it because hairdressers have been closed here in Sydney, Australia for, God, I think like going on 4 months now, and our restrictions, well, some of our restrictions ended yesterday for the first time in 4 months. I can finally go out and de-crazy my hair, so everything's tame up here. I'm feeling more chill, I'm feeling rejuvenated, refreshed. And I'm ready to do another reaction today. So, first of all, thank you guys so much for watching the second Vector reaction, which I posted, I think, about 5 days ago. I am glad you guys appreciated me appreciating it, and I certainly liked that album more than Outer Isolation, and I think that really showed in the video. So, thank you guys for all the comments, the likes, the well wishes. Just before we get into what we're doing today, please like, subscribe, turn on the bell, do all that good stuff. Leave comments for any albums you'd like me to react to, or any, things you'd like to say about the albums I react to. I will read and respond to pretty much all of them. So that's assured. Please, I love any comment you give me. So with that in mind, let's get into it. And today we are reacting to another Sweet Trip album. And the name of the Sweet Trip album we are reacting to is long. It's called Halica: Bliss Out Volume 11. Now, I'm doing this as part of this series I've just started with the last album reaction, where it's me reacting to your guys' suggestions. So, as I said in the last video, I've been really lazy and reacting to suggestions that you give me in the comments as much as I ask you to do them. So, the other day I was just like, you know what, let's buckle down and do these and listen to these great albums. So, this is part of a 5-video series. This is the second video in a 5-video series where I'm going to be reacting to 5 albums that have been recommended to me in the comments of past videos. Now, the problem with this one, though, in particular is, so I reacted to Velocity Design Comfort by Sweet Trip many months ago now, I think 7-8 months ago. The video, and much to my surprise, the video actually got a lot of attention. People really liked and respected my takes on it, even though I was quite lukewarm on it and had a lot of mixed opinions. People, just really appreciated how I went about it. So thank you guys if you've watched that video. I really appreciate all the comments you left on it. A lot of people asked for me to react to the album You Will Never Know Why, which is Sweet Trip's 3rd album. So, dear God, remembering this, I just cringe. So about like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to, buckle down, do it. I'm going to react to it. I'm going to see if I like it more than Velocity Design Comfort. So I did, filmed the reaction. And then, as I was going to edit it together, I found that half the files of that reaction were corrupted. So my laptop, which I used to film this, if you can't tell, through the terrible audio quality, my laptop reached a cap on storage and then decided to corrupt like half of the videos, so the like actual visuals were just frozen. So it's going to be one of the great pieces of lost media from this channel, the legendary You Will Never Know Why reaction. But yeah, so I would have reacted to that, but people have been asking for more Sweet Trip reactions in general, so in its place, I'm going to go all the way back to the start of Sweet Trip's career and react to their first album. Now, as to my opinions on You Will Never Know Why, just really quickly, I actually didn't really like it as much as Velocity Design Comfort. VDC has grown on me a fair bit. It's grown on me certainly a lot more in the past few months when I've really sort of buckled down and like listened to it and tried to pull it apart, work out why I don't like some parts and why I like some parts. And it's growing on me. I find it a really fascinating album, really well executed, really fascinating. The experimental elements are jarring, sure, and in my opinion a bit unnecessary, but at least they like shoot for something. It's a wildly ambitious album, and I really respect it for that. You Will Never Know Why didn't really have any of that ambition for me. It had some great songs. I think Milk is a really good song. I think Air Supply is a fantastic song. Also, Song About the Sea, sorry, is a fantastic... Is Song About a Sea or Song About the Sea? Hold on. I always get this wrong, and I'm a perfectionist with shit like this. It is Song About a Sea, yeah. So Song About a Sea was really... The 2 songs were really fantastic. But I don't know, there just felt like a lot of blandness on that album, and it felt like they were sort of going too far in the other direction. Like, VDC was way too, well, not way too, but quite a bit over the top in terms of experimentation. You will never know why. Just played it really safe to the point of blandness, in my opinion. So, to this day, while I've found Sweet Trip albums I kind of like, I've never found one that I loved. And I'm hoping to do that with Halica, their first album. So, I've heard a lot of people say this is actually very electronic, but not quite as glitchy as VDC was. So, I've heard people describe it as ambient techno, excuse me, like elements of just ambient music in general, so minimal techno. With, of course, those little light aspects of glitch pop that you expect from Sweet Trip, but not to the same excesses and extremes that Velocity Design Comfort went for. So, I'm hoping that I really like this. I'm hoping that it keeps it simple. I'm hoping that if there's some really, like, tight, concise songs on this, I hope that they're really well written and well performed. I hope the vocal performances are good. I don't even know if vocal performances are a big part of this album. I barely know anything about this album. I've just heard sort of the genre titles that are used to describe it. But yeah, fingers crossed that this is the first Sweet Trip album that I can like really adore, instead of just either find fascinating but don't really like an execution, or find to be sort of bland and inoffensive. Fingers crossed this is the one. Alright, so I've turned the lights on to get a little bit of light in here, and I have the album up on my title player too. So, this is Halica Bliss Out Volume 11. I have no idea where that title came from. Is this an actual Volume 11, or is that just some arty, like, way of titling an album? Who knows? Tell me in the comments, I'd be interested. Looks like it's about 55 minutes long, so that's a decent length. Often I'm not a big fan of that sort of album length where it's like in this weird void between, okay, it's this tight, concise 40 to 50 minute long album, or it's this sort of sprawling, expansive 70 to 80 minute long album. There's sort of like a middle ground in between there that I don't really like, but it looks like it's making up for it because we have some very long tracks here. So the first two tracks are over 10 minutes. I can't see exactly how long they are on this stupid player, but yeah, so Fish Pulse, both over 10 minutes. Shortest track is 3 minutes 47, which is track 5, and everything else sort of straddles the 6 to 8 minute range. So we have quite expansive and very fleshed out songs here by the looks of it, which is something that you have in parts on Velocity Design Comfort, but you know, a lot of those songs go in like the 4 to 7 minute range. So I'm interested to see how they tackle this. It should be a really, really, really curious listen. So let's get into it. This is track 1 we're going into first. So this is called Fish. As I said, 10 minutes long. I don't know, over 10 minutes long. I don't know exactly how long. And yeah, I'm just hoping it starts the album off with a bang. And I'm actually interested to get into this because I don't know how they're going to tackle this new genre and new approach to writing music. Or, well, rather their old approach to writing music, because this is their genesis. And I don't know, I think it'll be interesting once I listen to this to sort of try and divine how they made the transition into the later styles they did. Anyway, let's get into it. This is track 1, Fish, Halica Bliss Out Volume 11, Sweet Trip. Let's go. I'm ready. Very synthy already. Kind of a high-pitched whine. It's a very luscious sound though, very luscious, very synthetic. That high-pitched whine though's annoying. Someone need to EQ that at some point in the process, I think. So it sounds like a thumb piano or something being strummed. Oh, okay. Got percussion. Yeah, very dreamy, very luscious, very angelic so far. not abrasive at all, apart from the whine. Apart from that, not abrasive at all. Just guitar in the left channel. It's a pretty little guitar line. Oh, okay. Might turn this up a bit actually. Very busy percussion, but it's buried quite far back in the mix, so it's not, you know, abrasive or jarring. Not, it sounds like an electric bass too, not synthetic, which is rare for them, particularly on VDC. My impressions of my impressions of my what am I trying to say? My preconceptions of how this would sound are being pretty much confirmed so far on this track. I mean, I didn't really expect vocals, especially this early on, especially as I'd heard this was an ambient techno album. I didn't expect vocals this early on, but it's nice to hear them. Very pretty, very light and delicate start so far. Interested to see where it goes. We're only 3 minutes in. Cutting back a lot, lots of delay. Fishes are pretty apt title. It sounds like I'm floating in some underwater dreamscape. With the sort of beachy guitar and the heavy delay. All it needs is some slide guitar to complement the rest of the mix. Yeah, I like this bit. I like how stripped back that drum part is. It's pretty. Whoa! Oh, there's the... Okay. Oh. It's gone already. It's like we went into like skittering trap hi-hats there for half a second. Oh, we're back. Has that squelchy sort of I know that's a famous synthesizer, isn't it? That particular bass. The wow 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 sound. Like a Roland TR, so I'm not sure. That squelchy sounds very, very famous, I know that. saying as big a fan of those little busier these bits as much though. I wish it really committed to the like spacey ambient bliss it was going in that direction with for a while. What's that heavily treated guitar or something? Pads out the mix lovely. Lovelily. In a lovely fashion. Oh, vocals again. First time we're hearing Roby as well. I think that's how you pronounce his name, isn't it? Yeah, the atmosphere. Perfect. They're really good at bass lines too. Like subtle, effective bass lines. I love that. Fantastic. What does that sound remind me of? There's some song that uses that sound. It's gonna bug me all day now. Out of shot when I do that. Fuck, hold on. You can kind of see me there? Yeah, you can. That's better. Ah. Yeah, I think this is what Sweet Trip should have been doing the whole time, honestly. I enjoyed that more than almost anything on You'll Never Know Why, and more than at least half of VDC. At least half of VDC. Sweet Trip, I've never heard them do soundscapes that well on any other song. Like, they sort of attempt it on a track like International. They attempt it on a song like Fruitcake and Cookies. They attempt it on the like, oh god, I don't know, some places on VDC. But even then, it's just none of it's as spacey and gorgeous as that. Like, I wish most of the moments on VDC, especially where they stray away from the, tight composed songwriting of a track like Disco or Chocolate Matter, and verge into the pure Bliss Out. That's in the title of the album, isn't it? It's perfect. Yeah, Halica Bliss Out, yeah. It's very apt. I wish they just, when they attempted those things, they did it with the same degree of finesse and beautiful production and gorgeous songwriting. Even if the songwriting was really like loose and roughly defined on a track like that, because I couldn't like hum you a melody or something from that track at all. It's not that sort of thing. And yet it manages, in my opinion, to be more enjoyable, as I said, than maybe like 3 or 4 other Sweet Trip songs. That was pretty fantastic. As I said, that whole thing felt like just like floating underwater, like being on a submarine, going underwater, seeing weird undiscovered species of fish that glow up and dance around in the dark, and, like seaweed slowly brushing past your window as you start to nod off and enjoy like a weird sort of dreamscape infused sleep. That was such a vibe. Like, such a vibe. Fish was such a vibe. It fit the title so well. There's so many things I'd like to talk about there that did impeccably well, but just from the outset, the atmosphere and the ambience that created, probably actually the best Sweet Trip track I've ever heard at creating a consistent, sustained ambience for almost its entire track length. I think the one moment that, as I said during the track, broke me out of that immersion a little bit was in the middle when, there was this great moment. The drums broke down to just really simple patterns, heavily delayed with the guitar in the background. And then, but then some, like, for a bar a piece in every 4-bar section, sometimes in the end of that little bit, they went into this sort of, like, almost techno, very sort of 808s beat that was quite energetic and frantic. And to be honest, I don't think it needed that. I think that broke my immersion a little bit. Other than that, though, it sustained that vibe for the entirety of the track. I was never once disrupted apart from that moment, and it was really, really impeccably beautiful. I think a clear point of influence there, which should have been really obvious to me given the ambient techno label, but a clear point of influence is Aphex Twin. Like, obviously, I hear Aphex Twin, and just generally like the Warped Records sort of oeuvre, I hear that all over a track like that. I hear Aphex Twin, like Selected Ambient Works in the light, not really bass heavy production, lots of emphasis on the trebles in the mix. I hear it in the watery instrumentation. I hear it in even just the sounds of the hi-hats and the skittering percussion that is quite light. Like, it isn't abrasive at all. It's just quite light, and it sort of skitters around in the background. I think in all of that, it's dripping with Aphex Twin influence, and just generally like IDM artists from around that time. Perhaps not, as I said, Aphex Twin's probably the most apt comparison because it's not like as bass heavy or as punchy as something like Boards of Canada or even like late 90s, early 2000s Autechre. Very Aphex Twin inspired. I would not be surprised if you asked them now, they would say that was their biggest influence on a track like that. But you know what? It comes across as a loving homage, and it doesn't feel forced or shoehorned in, apart from that one little bit where that sort of techno bass comes in, as I said, with the, you know, quite busy and frantic sound. That was a bit, you know, neither here nor there. But other than that, I think that influence is put to fantastic use and mixed really nicely with, as I said, like elements of shoegaze and dream pop, in particular. I think the melding of different sounds and ideas and musical concepts that happened in that track was pretty expert. I also think it didn't feel 11 minutes long either. It felt short. It honestly felt short. That time flew by. And I think that is one of the marks of a really good track, especially a really good long track. If it can be that long, but it can be, it can like justify almost every minute of its length, rather than long songs where it's like, okay, but this could have been an email. You know, like you could have done this in about 3 minutes in a tighter song, which, by the way, I feel about with a lot of tracks on VDC, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, time flew by, felt really short despite the 11-minute track length. I don't know, I mean, it wasn't like, was it like this mind-blowing 10 out of 10 masterwork of a song? No, I mean, I think to be that, it would have required maybe like a really amazing melody over the top. But that was, as I said, an exercise in soundscape and an exercise in creating a time and a place and, you know, a different tone and atmosphere. You know, like even down to the point of like experimenting almost with, you know, the musical equivalent of visual things like light in the mix. And this is not going to make sense, but like the light in the mix and colors, and like that was a very blue song. It was very like light, but sort of a muted sort of like angelic light, like not an aggressive, you know, in your face light. I don't know, that put me right in the feels. I loved that. I'm a bit tongue tied over that because it's hard to express, but that was really great. Honestly, I think if the rest of the album like meets the benchmark set by that, it's going to be easily my favourite album of theirs. I think they're really tapping into a niche on that track that they didn't fully commit themselves to in the rest of their discography. I just hope that caliber is kept up. Certainly the best opener of the Three Sweet Trev albums I've heard too, by a good margin too. I mean, to be honest, Tekka isn't that, you know, tough competition. So track 2 is called Pulse. Another 10-minute plus one. Hopefully it goes by as fast as Fish. You know, 10-minute long tracks, a bit of a balancing act. And it's hard to, you know, find that fine line between like too short and a real drag. And 10-minute tracks can go in the real drag territory. But, you know, they pulled it off on Fish. Let's hope they pull it off here. This is track 2, Pulse. Let's go. Guitar? I think it's guitar. Okay, that's more Tekka. Very strange beat too, very bit compressed. I'm waiting for it to, you know, go somewhere. Yeah, that beat's pure IDM, and I take back this doesn't sound like Ortega thing I said on the first track. That's like pure Amber era Ortega right there. Reinforces the Warp Records influence though, that's for sure. trying to work, yeah, I mean the bass lines just come in then. I'm trying to work out what like the harmonic identity of this track is, because it's not particularly like catchy or anything, that's for sure. I do kind of want this to go somewhere. It's a nice hi-hat pattern. We might be going somewhere, lads. Just maybe. Like a slightly drunken feel on the hi-hat, sort of off kilter. Oh. Oh, half time, alright. Oh. Okay. Yeah. Trying to work out what the atmosphere on this track is going for, to be honest. Oh. It's pretty cool how the vocal is that's sort of an androgynous vocal there. Can't tell if it's just her or both of them. That drum tone sounds a bit empty and I don't know. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, I can't say I love the halftime sort of feel it went for there. I think it sounded like an electronic emulation of an acoustic drum kit, which is a risky technique because it can sound rough sometimes. I do like repetition though, so I guess I appreciate that it's, you know, committing to something for a long period of time. Even if I'm not crazy about that something. Yo, 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 yo. The offbeat, the offbeat is emphasised. Tap, 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 tap. Quite rare for IDM like this. Actually, I mean, warming up to this, I'll be honest, the more it keeps going. Guitar? Yeah, I think it's guitar. Okay, so that was Pulse. Unlike Fish, that didn't really fly by. I think that felt every bit of its, 11-minute length. That definitely felt every minute of its length. That wasn't exactly something you could get lost in, like you could Fish. That sort of felt, and this is not meant to be necessarily offensive or anything, but that felt more like true ambient music in the original conception of the term, in that it did feel like background music a little bit. Like there wasn't really much happening in the foreground, especially not from a melodic or harmonic perspective, to really draw you in and hook you and keep you interested. Now, Fish didn't have that. It didn't have it much going on from a harmonic melodic perspective. But the difference with Fish was it was so intensely like atmospheric, and it was like a world-building track, almost. And the fact that it was so intensely atmospheric, you could just get lost in it and disappear into that world and come out 11 minutes later. You know? That definitely felt more like a sort of, it's hard to describe, sort of surface level in execution. Like it felt like there wasn't really a world to disappear in there. It had its elements, it put them there. Now we're going to do them for, more or less 11 minutes with some changes, and then the track's going to end. It felt like it was, like, instead of walking into an art gallery or something with millions and millions of treasures, like actually going through the doors into an art gallery with millions and millions of treasures and paintings and sculptures, like Renaissance things, beautiful things. The art gallery was just like an outside facade, and they put, okay, here's 3 paintings up, look at them, and you're not coming in. Like, that's a really clumsy analogy, but you get what I mean. There wasn't really much to disappear into there. That being said, though, I didn't mind it the more it went on. I think my favourite part of that was definitely the beat. I liked that very Ortega-esque beat. Like, that was a dead ringer of something that could have been on Amber, or, pretty much any of their early works. even like a tri-repeté or something. Also maybe a little bit of Boards of Canada influence instead of the crunchiness of it. Definitely felt a bit more Boards of Canada, and also how repetitive it was. Like, just, you know, the same thing over and over. With some, you know, a little set decoration put over the top. But, no, I didn't mind that beat. I like how it had this slightly sort of drunken feel to it. It wasn't, you know, rock solid and, like, ultra precise like you would hear on a sequencer. It sounded, there was a little bit of sort of off-kilter, staggering flow to it, which I quite liked. It made it more interesting, I think. And so, yeah, you had that. The bass line came in at one point. That was about the most we got in terms of, you know, like a harmonic or, well, melodic element, full stop. Wasn't that amazing. It was very nondescript. It was very, very low in the mix, so you sort of had to, like, search for it to actually find it. But, you know, it wasn't anything special from a melodic perspective. It was pretty nondescript. It sort of added a little bit of low-end kick to the track, but not dramatically. Something more interesting in the bass probably could have helped. And, like, Sweet Trip are very good at writing bass lines, I've noticed, for the most part. Like, the Velocity bass line is impeccable. What other good examples? Like, what's some other good examples? Some of the bass on Pro Love Ad, stuff like that, really fantastic. But yeah, here it was a little bit more nondescript. On the flip side, I'll talk about the element that I didn't really like in that song, and that was the middle section, where the beat broke down into this halftime feel, and suddenly they included this sort of quasi acoustic drum kit synth emulation by the sounds of it, which I think sounded kind of rough. It was very undefined in sound and wasn't as punchy or crunchy as the core beat was. There was sort of like some gated reverb on it too, which I think it didn't really sound that fantastic. It almost sounded like instantly dated. Because, you know, that sound is so last year for us now. But yeah, no, I wasn't a big fan of that section. I think it sapped a lot of the energy out of the song. That was the only appearance of vocals on the track, though, that middle section. Which, I mean, there's something to be said about that, I guess. The vocals are pretty nondescript. It was like a pulse, the vocals, at the beginning of some of the bars. Like, just an with some, I think, multiple Valeries layered on each other. Maybe Roby was in there, I'm not sure. But yeah, it sounded like a little pulse before getting into the rest of the, you know, like the beat to drive it and the bass and stuff. And that was fine. I mean, that was a nice little inclusion. Again, we haven't had on either of these tracks so far, we haven't really had a clear, defined melody, let alone a vocal melody. There was a little bit more in the way of sort of vocal harmonies and melodies on Fish. Here, there was none of that at all, as I said. So I'm interested to see what the album does with that going forward, because one of the biggest parts of Velocity Design comfort are the vocal melodies. So interesting rather to see them, you know, not really having that in their oeuvre this early in their career. And I don't know, other than that, yeah, the background synth pads were fine. They were very nondescript. They didn't really have a particularly amazing harmonic function or anything. And yeah, I think that about covers it. That was not nearly as good as Fish. There were parts I did like about that though, but altogether that really wasn't something you could just dissolve into like you could on Fish. And I think for that reason, it doesn't quite clear the benchmark set by the first track. But fear not, because we're getting into track 3. Now, the rest are shorter tracks by comparison. So I'm interested to see how they, you know, make that sound that they've been going for so far, which, by the way, is much more IDM and sort of techno-esque, and even ambient compared to Sweet Trip's later albums, like much, much more in that direction. Interested to see how they compress that sound into a comparatively tighter 6-minute package. So, yeah, track 3 is called Follow Me, 6 minutes 42, which by this album standards is tiny. Yeah, I'm interested to see. Let's just get into it. It's track 3. Oh. It's got a phaser on that or something? Like a triangle too. Oh. this percussion's much more, you know, in the front of the mix compared to the first two. So far, anyway. Ooh. More acoustic sounding drums here. Sound much better than the acoustic sounding drums in track 2, that's for sure. Okay. Very sparse so far. Like, you've got individual disconnected elements, but they're very empty sounding. Which is not a bad thing, I'm just saying that's an objective quality of the music. Is that what she said? An accordion or harmonium or something. Heavily delayed, of course, but... Oh! I like that. Is that a xylophone? No, glockenspiel, not a xylophone. I like that bass line too. I should have kept that going. I liked what that was building to then. Wonder if any of these instruments are real instruments or if it's all just synthetic apart from the guitars. I've absolutely no clue. Let me know in the comments. I almost do wish those vocals were high in the mix so I could... Because I think the melody is like a na-na-na, but I think that should be a bit more forward in the mix. Because it sounds quite nice. I think they could have made focus out of that. Where are we going? Where are we going? Where are you going with this suit, Chip? I feel like the first 4 minutes so far has been like a build to something that hasn't really come. Ooh! Okay, I lied. It's come. Jesus. Some industrial techno shit. Nine Inch Nails was called. They wanted their beat back. God damn. Did not expect that. I like that. Yeah, okay. Better. It's locked the track into place a little bit. I like that. Also, might I add, that beat is a perfect way to use the glitchy sound without being obnoxious and overblown. Looking at you, VDC. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I don't mind VDC, guys. I promise. I know I shit on it a lot. I actually quite like the album and I really respect it. But I think this album is doing the glitchy sort of thing much better than VDC ever did or does. beat solved the problems that the track had for me. Oh my god, the instant regret. The instant regret of about 4 minutes in me saying, oh, well, I actually don't really like this track that much. It feels like a bit of a build to something that hasn't really come yet. I think it's like a 4 out of 10. It's very nondescript. And then about 2 seconds later, BAM! The beat comes in. Woo! Oh my god, okay. Yeah, that end saved it. That end completely saved the track. I respected what the first half was going for in theory. Like on a theoretical sort of level, I liked the idea of having about 10 different layers, sort of doing different things, but never fully like gelling into one and never fully becoming cohesive and just sort of existing in this sparse soundscape of a song in the first half. Respected that in theory. In practice, it sort of went nowhere, in my opinion. I didn't really enjoy that first half all that much. There were some parts I liked. I liked the glockenspiel little melodies, and I think they sort of built to something that, as I said, didn't really come in at least those bits weren't resolved naturally. The rest of the track was, I think, but those little bits didn't really have a natural conclusion. They were just there out of nowhere, and I did like those bits. The drums were okay, again, very sparse, very simple. Some more sort of acoustic elements in there, which I didn't mind at all. But, you know, even like the vocals in the first little bit, I just, you know, nah, they were a little bit nah. And so about 4 minutes in, I'm like, okay, it's dropped out into this ambient bit. I don't know where this track's going. I'm not really loving it so far. And then this beat just crashes through from heaven, which is like, it was acerbic, it was crunchy, it was gritty. As I said, it sounded like an industrial hip-hop or an industrial techno beat. Loved it. Like, that beat was fantastic. And as I said, it locked the entire song into place for me. Like, from then on, everything made sense in that song. Honestly, totally made sense in that song. It made the vocals, the beautiful little "come to me" melodies make sense. It made, you know, like some of the strange percussive things happening in the background and the glockenspiel and everything. It, like, locked it all into place for me for the end of the track. And really, my only complaint for that bit was that beat wasn't, you know, similar to Pulse, track 2. It was Pulse, yeah, Pulse. My only regret was that it wasn't like Pulse and that beat didn't continue for pretty much the entire thing, because that was a really fantastic beat. I just, yeah, loved how busy and gritty and aggressive it was. And, you know, that's something that Sweet Trip play a lot with, especially on VDC. Having these sort of aggressive and painful sounds over these really delicate, beautiful, angelic sounds. And on VDC, the problem is, I think, honestly, in my opinion, a lot of the really abrasive elements actually detract from the album, like actively detract from the album. Because sometimes I just think they don't know, especially on that album, they don't know when they have these really beautiful songs, you know, beautiful, well-written songs, and they feel like they need to put all this other crap on top. But this is the first time I've heard that sort of abrasive sound on a Sweet Trip album actually used to complement the song and, like, make it better. And I absolutely love it for that. I have mad respect with how they pulled that off, honestly. Again, I mean, and it was like a build to something. It was a very satisfying climax to the track. I almost think that climax could have been the whole thing. Like, I think that should have underpinned more of the track. But you know what? Do the ends justify the means? I think the ends justify the means here. I think the ends of that beat and how the track's sort of locked in the last 2 minutes justify sort of the meandering wanderings of the first 4 minutes. I didn't mind that at all, and I definitely preferred that to Pulse. So, on to track 4, which is called Come To Me, which is strange because it sounded like they were singing Come To Me in track 3, so I don't know if this is some statement, like grand artistic statement, I have no idea. All I do know is that it's 7 minutes and 11 seconds long, so a little bit longer than Follow Me, but definitely not at Fish or Pulse levels. Yeah, hoping for something maybe a bit more, polished and less meandering, more refined than Follow Me was. Doesn't have to have that sort of industrial grind at the end like Follow Me did, but, I'll take pretty much anything as long as it's really good, honestly. This is track 4, Come To Me. I know you can do this, Sweet Trip. Let's make it a classic. Oh, acoustic guitar. I did not expect that on this album. That's like milk or something. With like birdsong percussion or like... Reminds me of that percussion on Dolphin by Panda Bear, which is just like the snare is a water drop. I think it's bird song. Oh, I think it's bird squawking. Ooh. Whoa! Oh, I love that. Perfect beat choice. See, a track like this, okay, pausing it. See, that delicate acoustic guitar would have been ruined if they put something aggressive and trippy over it, in my opinion. So they did the perfect thing by keeping that beat as sparse as possible. Really great start to the track, really clever. Yeah. So that's okay because that isn't really abrasive. I'm okay with that. Anyway, the acoustic guitar isn't the focus anymore. So it goes against what I said, but I'm still okay with that, I think. Okay, so they're going to keep it simple, then go into a busier section. I'm fine, totally fine with that. I like this. Whoa! Perfect delay. It's like a 9 Inch Nails Closer type beat. The snare in particular. Yeah, okay, here we go. Oh! Whoa, subby. Oh, I love the subby bass there. It's good to have good speakers so I can pick up on that. Headphones, I don't think I'd be able to. I love this. See, it's busy, but it's not too busy. Like, it's not, like, the individual parts of it, the notes are distinguishable from one another. It's not like this slurry of noise. I mean, do I like the more sparse, simple moments? Yes, but I'm fine with this in the context of the song. different beat. Not as good, but it is a different beat. I actually like the little sine wave noises. I think they're quite cute. They complement the track really well. One sec. You know, I think I'll have this discussion here before I forget, because no doubt I'll forget by the end of the track. You hear a lot about albums and musicians putting noise into tracks for some greater artistic purpose. And what I mean by that is like with Spirit They've Gone, Spirit They've Vanished by Animal Collective. Very noisy album, very loud album, very like the high-pitched squeals on that album end points are almost unlistenable. But the creators, Avi and Panda, they said they put that in there. Well, I don't know if they directly said this, but it's widely believed, I think, that they put that in there to sort of like as an artistic statement about, you know, the essence of childhood, because, you know, high-pitched sounds, you can't hear them as you get older. So it's sort of it stands as a metaphor on a micro level for, you know, the way that children hear the world, and on a macro level over like the innocence and the things you can sort of see and experience as a child that maturity clouds, and maturity makes to fade away as you get older. And even on another Sweet Trip album, on Velocity Design Comfort, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, they put the noises in there, like the extreme amount of very abrasive glitches, to sort of represent like the detritus around a sort of fading memory. Like a lot of people describe it as this really deeply nostalgic memory, and a lot of those glitches are, you know, like the parts that are missing in your conception of the world as how it was like 10 years ago or however long ago in a memory. Those things are interesting in theory, but in practice, I don't think they really work. In my opinion, I think like that's all well and good, but something needs to work more in conception, but also in practice. And I think in both of the cases of Spirit They've Gone, Spirit They've Vanished, and of of Velocity Design Comfort, the abrasive glitchiness of them does detract from how much I just enjoy listening to them in the first place. And honestly, it's one thing to have a really good like theory, but it's the other thing to put it into practice really effectively. On this album in general, and particularly on a track like this, I think you're starting to get like a lot of those sort of glitchy things, but they add to the track, like actively add to the track rather than detract from it. And they help add this really distinct and clear atmosphere to the song without, you know, like making it less enjoyable from a pure listening perspective. Like this is still a track that I could throw on any day of the week without sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to appreciate this from an artistic perspective. I think those noises are really cathartic, and the way noise is used on this album in general is really cathartic, effective, but above all, really listenable and enjoyable. And I think that's the very important difference between this and not only VDC, but several other albums that use noise as a way of making an artistic statement. I just wanted to point that out. I think the like sine waves and stuff on this track really great. They add to sort of the off-kilter, strange, almost alien atmosphere of the track. But they also make it a more enjoyable track too, which, you know, I think that's really hard to do, but they pull it off. Anyway, that was a long-winded aside. Let's get back into it. We only have a minute left. I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was second only to Fish in the scheme of the 4 tracks I've heard so far. Thoroughly enjoyed that. That was ambitious, but not, alienating. It was experimental, but not abrasive. It was well written, but not overwritten. It was really good, start to finish. I really liked that. And I talked in the middle of the track a big part of the reason why I really liked that. I went through that already, but I love how noise is used on a track like that. And on this album in general, for the most part. But otherwise, I don't know, I liked that the acoustic instrumentation in the form of the acoustic guitar was much more prominent in that song. Really well played, just simple chord work. Nice chord structure, nothing, over the top or really experimental or anything. Just a simple, light, delicate chord structure that was pleasing to the ear. I liked it. Vocals were still very buried in the mix when they came in, but from what I heard, the vocals were really nice. Again, angelic, beautiful, gorgeous. Not like, the melody of the year, not the most catchy thing I've ever heard, but not at all, not really even forgettable, I'd say. I think it was quite pretty. In terms of, I think a lot of these songs so far, it seems like I like about 70% of it, but there's this one section that I don't care for as much. The one section in that I didn't care for as much was, the one that started about 4 or 5 minutes in. Because we had it at the beginning and popping up a little bit later, we had the super simple, very sparse beat, like the boom, baka beat. And again, there was like very little skittering sort of stuff happening there. That was super sparse, effective. I loved that. Those are my favourite bits of the track, unambiguously. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we had this really frantic and energetic beat for a little bit there, which came in sometimes. And as I said, it was busy, but not overtly so. So it wasn't, as I said, this slurry of noise or this wall of noise. It was just a really busy and effective beat, well deployed, well programmed, well sequenced. But then in about 4 or 5 minutes in, we also had this beat come in, which was like slightly, it was sort of straddled like middle road between the two extremes of ultra sparse and very frantic and frenetic. And in my opinion, that didn't work as well. It sounded more generic and less memorable than the rest of the track. Which, you can't win them all. So that section wasn't amazing. I didn't love that beat as much. But, honestly, I don't think that actively detracts at all from how great that sparse, just acoustic guitar vocals and, light synth work and beat section was. And it doesn't detract from how great that frantic and, very high energy drum section was that popped up a couple times. I think those parts are really great. And at the end of the day, the part I didn't like was quite small. So, you know, it's totally fine. For the most part, I really enjoyed that. I really, really enjoyed that. And you know what? I'm actually enjoying this album quite a bit so far. Like, it's not amazing, but I think it sometimes helps to go into albums like this with, like, low expectations. Like, I've never heard people call this the best Sweet Trip album. I've never heard people, you know, call it, like, VDC one of the greatest albums they've ever heard or anything. And I think it sometimes helps to not hear that and to sort of go into something with not really low expectations, but like manageable expectations. And honestly, so far it's meeting or exceeding my expectations. And genuinely, even beyond that, I think it's shaping up to be my favourite Sweet Trip album. There, I said it, and I'm going to own it. And hopefully all these platitudes ring true going into the end of the album, the last 3 tracks here. So track 5 is the shortest one by far, and it's called Starlife. It's 3 minutes 47 long, so yeah, very brief by this album standards. Not really brief by, particularly brief anyway, by like VDC or You'll Never Know Why standards. But yeah, this is on the shorter side for this album. Interested to see, is it going to be like an interlude-ish track? Is it going to be a sort of shorter pop song? I mean, who knows? We'll see. It could either be Disco 1.0 or it could be some weird noise track. Let's go. This is track 5. Starlife. Shoegaze, wow. Oh, lovely soundscape. Lovely soundscape. Reminds me of something that'd be on soundtracks for the Blind Swans. A winner with that backing soundscape. Anything that comes in over it now is going to be pretty amazing. I love their delay on this album. Okay, I didn't expect this to be the direction the track went in, but more sort of industrial beats. Maybe it's time to run away, is that the lyric? wasn't a big... I think that was my least favourite track so far, probably. Probably was it? I don't know. That was fine. I just feel like that didn't need to be on the album. Like, they could have cut that. I don't know what that adds, unless the next 2 tracks really contextualize it in a way that makes it make full and total and clear sense. I don't really know why that needed to be on the album. I feel like that really didn't say much or do much of worth or merit, to be honest, especially compared to some of the other tracks around it. Like, I felt like that didn't really know what it wanted to be. I think, especially for a 3-minute track, like, you can get away with multiple changes in a 10-minute track. Or something, you know, like the first 2 tracks on the album, in fact. But, I don't know, in a 3-minute track to have, like, a bunch of sort of slightly disjointed sections like that, it felt kind of thrown together and sort of cobbled together last minute. It didn't feel like there was as much care or thought put into a song like that as there was with some of the highlights on this album. I will say the beginning was fantastic. Like, I was immediately bowled over by the, as I said, the shoegazy, almost Ride-esque or My Bloody Valentine-esque guitars at the beginning created an awesome wall of sound. And, like, if they just played with that for the full track, which is what I was really hoping they do, you know, the track would have completely won me over. I would have probably loved it, to be honest. And, I mean, to that effect, the first minute where they did sort of play with that, you know, shoegazy guitar backdrop while putting some light percussive and other sort of guitar elements over the top of it, I think that was a really good start to the track. But, like, by a minute in or something, all of that just disappeared, and it went with a few little different, like, micro sections, but most of them were based around that guitar riff, which wasn't amazing. Like, well, not a it's no Sweet Child of Mine, let's say that. It's not an incredible riff or anything. Quite stock standard, to be honest. But yeah, so I think, I don't know, from the second half of the track onwards, I sort of zoned out a little bit. I don't think there was a whole lot there to comment on or really, like, love or sink my teeth into. It was interesting that there was some very, you know, overtly acoustic sounding drums with the heavily delayed ride cymbal kick drum that came in at the points there. But again, that was, you know, a little more than interesting. It wasn't incredible or anything. It was just different to what's been done so far. Yeah, I really not much to say about that. The vocals were okay, but they more or less just follow the guitar line anyway. Yeah, I'd say that's my least favourite so far. I couldn't really find a whole lot to really appreciate in that, to be honest. Thankfully, though, it's so short that it isn't taking up much of the album and we can move on to other tracks. And I mean, even though the length, like the short length, sort of acts to its detriment a little bit in that it can't really have space to flesh out any of its individual little ideas there, I'm also glad that it starts and ends pretty soon, like, in the grand scheme of things. So, you know, it's not going to ruin the album or detract from the album experience as a whole in any way, shape or form. And I'm going to look to track 6, which is called Traces, to actively add to the album experience. This one is 7 minutes 35 long, so longest since Pulse. I'm interested to see what it does. All of the tracks have done things that are in the same sort of wheelhouse, like same sound, same basic elements, but you know, most of them have provided new or interesting spins on the overall IDM style the album's going for. Some of them emphasize, you know, the ambient side more, like Fish. Some of them emphasize the techno side more, like Pulse. Interested to see in what direction this track leads. So this is track 6, Traces. Let's go. Whoa. Oh, squelchy drums. Sounds like stepping in mud. They love their delay. When in doubt, smother everything with delay. That's what I said. Oh. Very clean guitar. Gonna need to hear more to determine whether I really love that guitar line or not. Depends what they do with it, I think. Very interesting beat. I have no idea how they put that together. I have no idea what the bass sounds are that they're using in that and delay. Vocal melody's not incredible either, to be honest. Bass is kind of cool. I like how simple and deep it sounds. One of the few really like bassy elements on any of these songs. Almost sounds like a violin. I thought it was a violin in the right channel, but it's not. Bassline's definitely the highlight of this song so far. The guitars are right though, but you know. I feel like it's going to drop an industrial beat on me in 2 seconds. Oh, whoa. Yeah, very bass driven, this song. Very rich bass too, well produced. Yeah, sparse as hell. interesting choice to just cut everything out, leave the bass and the guitar. Oh, we're back, but yeah, that was an interesting section. I actually didn't mind that in the context of the track. That was a cool little moment, the computer sound sort of thing. Okay. Yeah, so that was that song. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy that. I thought it was a very 6 out of 10 song. Like, nothing special, but there was nothing that I can point to and say I didn't like that bit. You know, it was just a bunch of decent ideas, executed fine, explored reasonably well, and the overall effect was that it was just okay. Like, that was an okay song. I didn't mind that at all. I think with that one, I don't know, there's a weird sort of impression I got of it. It's hard to sort of describe, but it felt almost more like amateurish compared to the other tracks, because a lot of the other tracks felt really rich and layered and expertly produced, dense in points, sparser in points, but still, you know, maintaining a real polish to them. That felt a more like a sort of lo-fi bedroom pop aesthetic. And I can't quite put my finger on why. I think it possibly could be just due to the fact that there were less layers in that compared to most of the other songs. I mean, really in that you only had the beat, the bass line, the lead guitar line, and some guitar effects at points, and that really made up the bulk of that song. Excuse me, hiccups. But yeah, so I think fewer layers and just a little bit less of a polished sheen over that song made it sound more like bedroom pop. It had a much different aesthetic to a lot of the dreamier and more atmospheric and angelic sounding songs on the rest of the album. But yeah, I mean, that isn't necessarily a good or bad thing. I just think it makes it possibly less meaty than a lot of the previous tracks. So it's a similar sort of story to what was it called, Starlife, but with a different sort of method to get there. Like, Starlife just delivered a lot of ideas a bit clumsily, but that was just had one sort of clear idea, one or two clear ideas, and just didn't really do a whole lot with them. Like, you know, kept it going and going and going. And again, repetition's totally fine. Like, I have no problem with repetition at all. In fact, I love repetition. But, yeah, no, there wasn't a whole lot of development there, to be honest. But, yeah, there were no individual parts I didn't like. Like, the guitar line was a little bit, you know, melodically dour, I think. Not particularly special in any way, but the bass was really nice. I do like that the bass was very forward in the mix this time. And that was very low end heavy rather, compared to pretty much anything else on this album so far. So I did appreciate that. As I said, that section where everything cut out but the bass and the guitar, that was really cool. I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't see it coming. I mean, it didn't need to be there, but I don't know, I thought that was just a neat little bit. The beat had this really very unconventional beat, had this sort of squelchy, muddy sound to it, with no like clear crunchy snares or no like defined low end heavy kick drums, but it did provide a decent pulse, and it did have a sort of propulsion that did push the track forward a little bit. I don't know, I didn't mind it. There were just a lot of things on that one that I didn't mind, but I don't think they added to the album in any major way. And to be honest, these last two tracks have been a little bit of a nothing burger, so I really hope that to end the album with the final track, things get a bit more exciting. And speaking of the last track, we're moving into the last track. So this is track 7, final track on this really interesting album, Halica Bliss Out Volume 11. Jelly Charm. 8 minutes 34 long, so third longest on the album so far. Longest since track 2. I'm excited. I really hope this has all of the highs of the album and none of the middling lows. Yeah, I honestly, Sweet Chip closers haven't been that amazing for me. Their openers and closers, except for Fish, have always been a bit middling for me, so I really hope this breaks the trend. I'm just realised I'm holding my glass of water, and that's kind of weird. But yeah, so track 7, Jelly Charm, really hope this is good. Let's just end this album off with a bang or with some bliss. I'll take either. Let's go. Now I'll drink it, because it's less weird now. Oh. Okay, Aphex Twin. That vocal melody. I'm not sure where this is going though. Okay. Oh, I love that. That little synth melody. I love that. That's so wistful and distant and beautiful. Nostalgic and melancholic. I like this. Okay. Oh, beautiful melody. Best melody on this thing so far. I love that melody. Da-da, beautiful. Da-da, gorgeous. Love that. You'll find me tracks with melodies like that. I'll eat them up. I'm liking where this is going. Very sparse beat again. Ah, okay. Oh, the mix between that synth melody and the vocals. I like how each cycle also there's another percussive element added in. So first it was some of the basics of the percussion, then it was the kick, and now it's the hi-hats. And that organ is a nice little addition too. Oh yes. Alright. I'm obsessed with that melody. Na 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 na. Honestly, you know what? Fuck me. The rest of the instrumentation could literally be like fart noises and burp noises, and I'd still think this track is amazing on account of that synth melody and the vocal melody. It's just bubbly and nice. Bubbly. Why does that have to end? Why does that have to end? Why can't that be a 20-minute song? All I need in life, I'm a simple man. I'm a simple fucking man. All I need in life is a good melody. All I need in life is a good, simple melody that can just be repeated over and over and over and over again. A really good, simple melody. That track gave me a really good, simple melody, repeated over and over again, while the track slowly developed and morphed and shifted. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Best song on the album? I think so. Is it better than Fish is the question. I think that's better than Fish. I think I like that more than Fish. And I love Fish. But that is probably top 3 fucking Sweet Trip songs. Oh my god, I loved that. I loved the vocal melody. I loved that synth melody. None of it really made sense until about 3 minutes in, but when I realised 3 minutes in what the song was going to do, I just completely lent myself over to it. And it just took me and did horrible, horrible things to me, that song. That was just amazing. And even like the synth patch they used for that melody was, I keep using this word, but it was just bubbly and wistful and serene, but also like childlike and playful in a really expert way. And I'm sure that's what they were going for with that song. I guarantee that's what they were going for. You know, those like toy xylophones, the wooden xylophones that like they give to kids in preschool centres and stuff. That's, I think, the overall timbre of that synth melody, and I think that's why it sounds so childlike and nostalgic and naive, but in the best possible way to me. Just everything, the way that was executed, even like keeping it in the right channel so it was really clear and defined in there. Oh, loved it. Absolute chef's kiss. Fantastic, fantastic. And whichever one of them, Roby or you know, I'm not sure who came up with that, but Roby or Valerie, whoever came up with that melody, just like mad props to them, honestly. And I like how when the vocals were in, like the vocals sort of had some interplay with it too. Like there was sort of like the vocal melody did something, and then 4 bars later, you know, the synth melody would play out, and then it was just this call and response of interaction that was also fantastic. And you know, the beat wasn't intrusive at all. The production, the beat was just, it slowly developed. It was awash with these light synths, this organ which was fantastic and very consistent through the track, which I loved. Percussion that was again light and really well played, well deployed, well considered. Just an expertly crafted track. And really, honestly, I think that track is the best expression of the Sweet Trip aesthetic promise, in my opinion. I think that track encapsulates everything that like I really want from Sweet Trip, and everything that they can do at their best. And I hear glimpses of it in other tracks, like on Disco and Air Supply, I hear the sort of expertly crafted melodies. And on a track like Velocity, I hear the sort of moodiness and almost like mysterious sound that a lot of their best tracks have. And on, you know, Fish, I hear the amazing atmospheric ambient worldscapes that they build. On that track, I get all of that. On that track, I get all of the best parts of the Sweet Trip sound. None of the worst, none of the drawbacks. In love with that. And this album as a whole, I really like it. The question is, how much do I really like it? I'm actually going with like an 8 out of 10 or something so far. This feels like the sort of album, though, that could like drop over time a little bit for me. But I guess I have to see it for repeated listens. But for now, I think that was an 8 out of 10. Perfect ambient. Like the title is, it's a perfect ambient, blissed out, chilled out, gorgeous little gem of an album. And I think the title is perfect. It truly is, what is it? Halica Bliss Out Volume 11. Perfect title for it. Because that's exactly how it feels. It's a bliss out. It has plenty of washing, airy synths. It has plenty of, you know, guitars that drenched in shoegaze and dream pop influences, has plenty of sort of softer beats, like delicate soft beats, has plenty of like industrial acerbic beats sometimes to contrast with that too. It has a lot of things that I love, all of the best parts of Sweet Trip, but really, except for like one or two places with none of the typical drawbacks that you see on the other album, like none at all. Almost every track on that was memorable. Almost every track on that like did its own thing in a really interesting way. It never got old or samey or homogenous. Really the only reason it's an 8 out of 10 right now for me and not higher is just because, you know, I could use some more amazing melodies on some of the other tracks, like as melodies as amazing as that last track and on some of the other best Sweet Trip songs. But yeah, I mean, in the absence of that, it's still a really fantastic album. 8 out of 10, and I like it more than every Sweet Trip album I've heard. I haven't heard their most recent one. I'll probably do that eventually if you guys want to see it, so let me know if you guys do want to see that in the future. But, you know, of the ones I've heard, of the Sweet Trip projects I've heard, easily the best. I think that just captures an atmosphere and a tone and a feel better than anything else they've done, like long form at least. Top 3 songs, I mean the top 2 is obvious. Jelly Charm, best. I explained why many times over. Excuse me. Second best, probably Fish. I love just the ambient underwater seascape, soundscape, worldscape, runescape. No, I'm kidding, not runescape, but just the underwater landscape that track encapsulated. Fantastic. Really lost myself in that one. I think the way it did that was great. And I don't know. It's obviously between Follow Me and Come to Me. I think both of them are really good in their own ways. I do think I like Come to Me just a little bit more. I like the acoustic guitar on Come to Me a lot. Like, I think that's a fantastic element. I like the mixture of, you know, frantic beats, some really sparse beats, and something in the middle, which, you know, isn't as good. But the sort of the beat work and the production on that track, I think, is really impeccable. It's not really on the level of Fish or Jelly Charm, but it's still a pretty great middle part of the album for me. And overall, guys, that was an absolute treat. I really enjoyed reacting to that. So, thank you guys for watching. If you got here to the end, I really applaud you. It's another long video. Let me know in the comments anything you'd like to say, if you'd like to recommend me an album, if you'd like to leave commentary on what I can do better, things that you like, things that you don't like about just this channel in general. If you'd like to leave commentary over things that I've got wrong about this album or things that I should know about this album. If you'd like to tell me what your favourite tracks are and what your least favourite tracks are, I will read and hopefully respond to every single one of those comments. So please do like, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. The channel is slowly but surely growing. So I'm really excited and happy about that. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.